Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Dovetails event in the shadow of the bomb. For 75 years, we've lived in the shadow of the bombing of two Japanese cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, during World War II. It was an unparalleled act of destruction and has shaped our post-war world. In 2017, United Nations voted to ban the stockpiling and use of all nuclear weapons. But it took 3 more years before the Treaty on the Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons was ratified. On 26th of October last year, Honduras became the 50th country to ratify it, enabling it to pass into international law on the 22nd of January 2021, which is tomorrow. So the UK and the US and other nuclear powers refused to sign that treaty, and they will be in breach of the law tomorrow. We will be. They do not speak for us. In Dovetails, we oppose the use of all weapons and abhor the obscene profits made from the arms trade. The atom bomb was an extraordinary scientific achievement that emerged from international cooperation between the US, the United Kingdom, and Canada during World War II. It created the most destructive weapon in human history, capable of wiping us all out. Just think what those scientists could have achieved had they been working for the benefit of mankind. Our first section is going to be about Hiroshima, the first place where the bomb was dropped on the 6th of August 1945. Over 70,000 people were killed outright in the initial blast, but as many again are estimated to have died in the following months from burns, radiation sickness, and hunger. The city is now one of the top tourist destinations in Japan. People come to the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park and Museum trying to understand the scale of the destruction, which was so great that people who lived in the city could hardly grasp it had been caused by a single bomb. Hiroshima today may be a spiritual center where people come to meditate on the most devastating single act of World War II, but it's also the site of possibly the greatest question mark over the ethics of war in human history. Can it ever be right to kill so many innocent people, even if you think it were to save so many more? Our first reader tonight is a wonderful prize-winning poet who has won the Cinnamon Poetry Pamphlet Prize. She also won her pamphlet War Baby also won that prize. Her poem Invitation was the winner in the 2019 Beyond Borders writing competition on the theme of creative peace. And I was the judge and judged it anonymously, so was delighted to discover that it was Anne. Her latest book is Drawhead, in collaboration with Sheila Templeton and Maggie Rabatsky, writing in English, Scots and Gaelic, respectively. So I'd like to introduce A.C. Clarke.
Thank you very much, Jean. And thank you for inviting me to read. I'm looking forward to hearing everybody else read too. My poem is one of a sequence that I wrote several years ago, and it's in my very first collection, the whole sequence, and it's all about Hiroshima. And it's called Kamikaze. And we associate kamikaze with the Japanese pilots who dive-bombed Pearl Harbor and so brought Japan into the war. But in Japanese tradition, kamikaze means divine wind. And it was first used of a wind which the Japanese believed saved them from Chinese invasion during the 13th century. And they believed that that wind would save them from invasion at any time in the future. And there's a kind of irony to that. One other thing, which might be a bit obscure when I read the poem, you may not realize, but when Enola Gay, the plane that dropped the bomb, came over Hiroshima, the siren sounded. They thought it was an ordinary conventional attack. But the plane seemed to turn away. And the all clear sounded almost at the instant that the bomb exploded. So, kamikaze. The thermometer stood at 80 degrees. At 8:15 a.m. precisely, all the windows broke. They noticed the light, like a magnesium flare used to show up a target. But this was broad day. There wasn't a huge bang. When they came to, they wondered where their clothes had gone, why their skin began stripping off like badly glued wallpaper. Then came wind, not the wind they'd expected, not like any wind they'd ever known. Last, black rain. Everything subsided. The ones left upright found it hard to see for dust in their eyes. They remembered only the all clear sounding before the normal exploded to yellow sand, leaving behind its shadows, fused into tarmac, or onto one of the walls that stayed standing for no reason at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. Our next reader is Ellen McAteer, who is Thames-born poet, she says, but she has meant a great deal to the spoken word scene in Glasgow. She was a founder and trustee, and is still a trustee of the Tell It Slant Poetry Bookshop in Glasgow. Unfortunately, they've got her down south now. She's general manager of Poetry London magazine. Her pamphlet, Honesty Mirror, is due out with Red Squirrel Press this year, and a collection supported by Arts Council England is forthcoming. Ellen McAteer.
Jean, it's amazing to see, to be amongst so many Scots. The magic of Zoom, I can travel up there and see you all, and amongst so many people who feel the horrific bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki as much as I did when I first learned about it as a girl. So I have a few books on both, and interestingly, my son is now researching like the physics of nuclear bombs in the sense of what they do to cities. So, you know, he's actually informed this poem quite a lot. But John Hershey, his kind of account of Hiroshima in 1945 has also informed it. Hiroshima 1945. August was a series of burning suns, but this was a new light. A rose in the sky, blooming crimson, a noiseless flash cut across the sky. It seemed a sheet of sun. Mrs. Nakamura took a single step towards her sleeping children when something lifted her. She seemed to fly into the next room, over the raised sleeping platform, pursued by parts of the house. Waking in the dark, she heard a child cry, "Mother." Saw tiny Mayako buried to her breast, clawed her way towards her baby, no sound or sight of her other children. Dr. Fuji sat down cross-legged on his porch to read the Osaka news. The flash to him was yellow, sudden as paint in water. He got to his feet. Behind his rising, the hospital yawned with a ripping sound into the river. Then he was swimming amongst its remains. Father Kleinsorge took off his clothes, except his underwear, stretched out to read his Stimmen der Zelt in his bedroom, saw the terrible flash of a meteor hitting Earth, and went out of his mind for a few minutes. Then he was in the vegetable garden, in his underclothes, bleeding slightly from small cuts, the buildings gone. Dr. Terafumi Sasaki was one step beyond the open window when the light, like a giant photo flash, was reflected on the wall. Sasaki, Gambare, be brave, he said, dropping to one knee. The glasses flew from his face. The bottle of blood crashed against one wall, the slippers zipped out from under his feet. Hiroshima spread like a burning fan between its 7 estuaries. The sloping streets of Koi were waterfalls of black smoke. Drops of water the size of marbles began to fall. Trees, leafless skeletons, scattered clothing suspended from telegraph wires. Mrs. Nakamura made the wreckage fly above the crying voices, found an intricate mosquito net carefully wrapped around the feet of her son Toshio on top of his sister Yaeko under the wreckage. Bound like twins in a womb, not a single cut or scratch. Others, not so lucky, supported each other up the hill. Women with bra straps and suspenders imprinted in negative on their naked skin, since white repelled and black absorbed this terrible sunburn. The priest vomited constantly. The doctor asked, why is it night already? The heat fused mica on the granite gravestones. How can this happen in a world of God? Mrs. Nakamura asked the priest as the doctor struggled to get her son's temperature down by 1 degree, found as he tried to give a drip that victims did not stop bleeding once the needle was in. Keltoid tumors swelling like pink silk on their skin. Man is not now in the state that God intended, was the priest's reply. The newspaper said, much damage done. Sasaki was afraid at last. The censors had never admitted so much. The blue ocean can turn into a mulberry field.
Thank you very much. Our next reader is known to you all, I think. Ray Evans is a bit of a phenomenon, the last poet laureate of the Scotia Bar. He's a great poet with 2 published collections, and a 3rd is going to be published this year, we hope. He keeps producing even more all the time, so it may be a marathon collection this time. He is also a very fine photographer, whose work has appeared on our website, so I would ask you to have a look at the website and just see what a multi-talented person he is. Ray Evans.
Thank you. How do I follow that? This piece I wrote for a previous event we had on a similar theme. It's in 4 parts, and this is first part is called Picadon, which means brilliant light, thunderous blast. There are graves all over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, tombs with no names, with names but no ikotsu, no bones. Don't go to school today, my mother said. School is closed, for we are dead. There was a bright light and thunder like I've never heard. The air was sucked from our lungs. Everything turned white, then pitch darkness. And I thought, we are dead. The railroad tracks were scorched and black. People came walking quietly along the tracks, their skin like ribbons, their hair burnt to a cinder. And I thought, we are dead. I lost my sight, my eyes cried to see. My breath was scattered about. Once it held me close, like a mother or a father. And I thought, we are dead. Okonomiyaki. We ate well that day. I remember. Everything came together so easily. It only took a minute or two. Cooking is a very serious business. It's about what you like and how you like it. Nothing crisps up better than tempura. With a cold, thin batter and really hot oil, you get snappy bits chasing each other around the pan, like ants when a nest is destroyed. Surrender. It was a solemn occasion, just us and them. On a calm day at sea, everything about that day was as it should have been. At precisely 8 o'clock, we hoisted our flags, a clean set of colors. They were just regular flags. We pulled out of spares that day. Nothing special about them. They had not been used before. Along with the signatures and ink, everything was fresh. White paper, white uniforms, blank faces staring out to sea. The ceremony would end up in a glass case with photographs of those who stood to attention on the surrender deck. Miracles. They talked of miracles, heavenly hands guiding a chosen few who called for help. But none came that day. Hands were already in the heavens, pushing buttons, guiding missiles. It was just luck, not fate, if you survived at all. There was no divine intervention. Our aggression was sterilized by fire. We are forgiven. We are dead.
Thank you very much. We are now going to hear a piece of music by a young man who is new to Deaf Tales. He's come forward for this project, and I'm going to play his song. He's joined us from Ascent and doesn't have a very good signal, so we'll just have to play the recording.
Big red buttons for military blazers. Hovering ghost is enough to scare the very living bejesus out of all us boys acting so tough. Big red buttons in corridors of power. Pow, Kazam, Batman bubbles. Don't ring that red bat phone so sour. Don't bring that wrath onto our troubles. Let's disconnect that time bomb wire talk instead. Face the terror of man-made weather. No time to bicker, let's stick together. Brimstone waiting under the cover. It's the nuclear option. Let's not take it, let's find another. Little red flowers for military graveyards, laying our ghosts to rest. Over borders, send picture postcards instead of trying to be bravest and best. Little red flowers in meadows, casting no shadows, only casting their seeds in the breeze. For too long only sadness grows instead of planting kisses and trees. After walking around like Batman so long, are you too afraid to ask if we'll like who we've become when we take off the mask? let's find another.
When the list of targets for the atomic bomb were drawn up, Nagasaki wasn't even on it, despite being a major port and a large centre for shipbuilding and repairs. The chosen sites were Hiroshima, Yokohama, Kokura, Niigata, and Kyoto. But the US Secretary of War, Henry Stimson, had spent his honeymoon in Kyoto and asked President Truman to remove it from the list because of its many historic and cultural buildings. Nagasaki, which is a major producer of naval ordnance and steel, was selected instead. On the morning of 9th of August 1945, the bomber carrying Fat Man, the second nuclear bomb, took off for Kokura. Takeoff was delayed by half an hour because the support planes failed to rendezvous at the correct time. By then, clouds and black smoke from a firebombing attack in a nearby town were drifting across the city. 3 bomb runs over Kokura were made, but the pilot didn't have clear sight of the target and the plane diverted to Nagasaki. It's a place of flimsy wooden buildings of traditional design. But despite that, Fat Man, the bomb that morning, was more than 1,000 pounds heavier than the first bomb, Little Boy. Luckily, the city's geography meant that the explosion was contained in one of the valleys there, and the casualties were lower than Hiroshima, with perhaps just 35,000 deaths and 60,000 people injured. Our next reader is that very rare thing, a poet who is also a scientist. He lives on the south side of Glasgow with his wife and 3 children and works in the renewable energy sector. He also, as well as doing poetry, he enjoys composing music for piano and spending time on the Isle of Lewis. He should be so lucky. Peter Clive.
Thank you very much, Jean. Yes, one of these days I'll get to go back.
Yeah.
So, August the 9th, 1945. The sky inhaled the earth today. At 11 a.m, the cloudy Kyushu sky breathed in. It sucked the earth up through a long, sore, smoky throat into a lung of fire. And when it finally breathed out, it raised the city up on its palm and pursed its lips and blew away the ashes of our bones.
Thank you very much. The next poem is one of my own. Some of you may know I'm a huge opera fan. And it occurred to me while I was listening to one that this is Madame Butterfly actually comes from Nagasaki. I'm searching now for the music, which I should have here. I'm going to play it while I read the poem. So many times I've watched her, Butterfly, stand at the top of the hill, searching, eyes raking the sea for his ship, yearning for him to return. Her Yankee vagabond lover, a gypsy with officer's stripes and a private income. She stands outside her little house, concertina house, whose paper screens fold this way and that, enlarging the space inside for her well-fed husband, as she, moulding herself this way and that, becomes an American wife. The lease too is pliable, 999 years or else, month by month. Such Oriental ingenuity is nothing to later triumphs won by international cooperation. Alliances between his countrymen and Nazi scientists are far in the future. For now, Butterfly gives him her heart. 15 years old, she has nothing else. He, stronger and richer, jettisons morals for desire. A blinding flash. Butterfly, ravishing, innocent butterfly, comes from Nagasaki, the city ravaged by the bomb. 75 years on, I watch her story unfold with new eyes. Meaning folded into words transforms in the process. An emperor's refusal to surrender, yet, becomes a license to men aching to test their toys, to watch the bomb fall, the skies fill with smoke and flame, to see buildings crumble, careless of how many it kills. Oh, butterfly, marry your rich suitor, hold your son close. Stay inside that little house, slide the screen shut. Do not wait there, looking into the distance for your faithless lover's return. The wisp of smoke appears on the horizon. Oh, butterfly. Her exquisite love song pours down the hill as innocence waits to be betrayed over and over and over again. Thank you. The aftermath. Hiroshima, a city that had stood for 400 years, was razed to the ground by the force of the bomb, which killed up to 140,000 people and left a legacy of sickness for many years to come. Red oleanders blossomed in the city the year after the bomb, but many children of survivors were born deformed. 2 years afterwards, there was a rise in leukemia. 10 years afterwards, it was cancer. And there were questions, a whole thicket of questions. Harry Truman is said to have authorized bombing the Japanese rather than Europeans because their foreignness made it more acceptable to the American public. Whether that was true or not, he believed to the end of his days that by dropping the bomb, he had cut short the war and prevented many more lives being lost. That has been the subject of much debate over the years, particularly given that the US knew Japan had informally sought help from Russia in negotiating peace. Ordinary individuals after the war also had questions to ask themselves. Was it right to work in factories creating nuclear weapons, even if you did live in a blighted working town in the north of England? To send soldiers unknowing to take part in nuclear tests, leaving their health destroyed? Would the world ever recover from a nuclear war? Our next reader has joined us before and has contributed to our anthologies. He's an award-winning writer and performance poet from Leeds. His latest book is the pamphlet, This is Virus, a sequence of erasure poems made from Boris Johnson's letter to the UK during the COVID-19 pandemic. He also has a forthcoming poetry collection called The Taking Part, which will be published by Mairghread Press in 2021. His verse novella, A Notley Run, published in 2018, was shortlisted in the Best Novella category at the 2019 Saboteur Awards. And he tells me that despite all of that, his biggest audience is the people who've read his contribution in Viz. Joe Williams.
Thanks, Jean. Hi, everyone. The poem I'm going to do is from The Taking Part, that new pamphlet that's coming out this year, and it's a selection of poems which are on the theme of sports and games. So it might not be obvious what the connection is here. So I'll do the poem, and you'll find out. It's called Cold. The space race was never enough. The war could not be won by Laika or Yuri or Neil. So Spassky and Fischer were sent to the front line, reluctant troops in Reykjavik, playing to save the world. The Soviets' revenge was on the basketball court, an arena as unlikely as a miracle on ice. Americans never marched in Moscow, nor Russians in LA. Better a boycott than a bay of pigs. A button pushed. The bomb. Was the last blow laid on the cinema screen when Rocky put down Drago? A fitting end in fiction to a war that wasn't real. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. That was great. Our next reader is somebody who is new to Tales. Our Facebook page says that she went to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and also to Dartington College of Arts. Now, you may believe which of those you choose. She's a poet. She believes in aliens. She chases UFOs. I have to say that when I looked at her Facebook page, my favourite post was of woodland creatures and turtles singing a Revolutionary War anthem from Bellini's opera Norma. Chris Tait.
Okay, hi. This is Alien X-ray. Unstable dictators juggle bombs in a circus. Foreboding horror, a post-apocalypse status. Balancing terror, a world of just 3 blind mice. The cusp of Armageddon, a nuclear cafe. A voodoo garden, the earth like a ashtray. Chemists' crimes o' arson, a alien X-ray. Punch and Judy threaten both sides of the curtain. Toys are deadly weapons, politicians must bargain. Or we combust to phantoms, explode on spits of venom.
Thank you very much. Our next reader, I hope he won't mind my saying this, he came to writing through grief. After his wife died, he decided to follow a lifelong dream and went to a local writers group. He was lucky enough there to meet 3 of the great characters of the Scottish writing scene, Mo Blake, Willie Purcell and Ian Hunter. And together the 4 of them formed the collective Red Raw, which has helped provide a showcase for many other writers, including myself. Thank you very much, George. He has published 2 collections of poetry and a pamphlet, Brantwood, that place of little green poems, which came out in 2019 from Cinnamon Press. George Colkitto.
Thanks, Jean. Yeah, the poem I'm about to read is actually based on a quote from Ted Hughes' Bridestones. Earth's heart stuff laid bare. Beating out a drum roll of war. Time for the troops to gather in the deserts, to march the stone dry roads. Prepare for earthquake and hurricane. For the tempest bringing Caliban and monsters of our imagining. Now we rewrite all our warnings, tear down every signpost. We will not welcome raven or dove, for this battle was lost before we realized we were the enemy. So we will gather at our funeral parade, girded with past honors of destruction, pinned to our chest the long dead, wearing the coats of the fallen. Some will head to the planets, take flight in the hope of new worlds. We'll look down on Earth's heart stuff laid bare, our blue planet turning weaker and dying. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Our next reader is Janet Crawford. And Janet is also somebody very well known to people in the Scottish literary scene. She is a filmmaker and a poet. She was also part of Leslie Trainor's initiative, Women with Fierce Words, which was one of the most riotous launch events I've ever been at. I'd like to, and also Janet is a photographer, some of whose photographs you're going to see when our online project goes up online tomorrow. I'd like to welcome Janet Crawford.
Hi, good evening everyone. Thanks very much for having me tonight, Jean. I will qualify that by saying I wasn't there that night. I wasn't there. And it's nice to see Midge. Midge was actually in Japan with me. So she'll recognise much of this piece. The only context I'll give it is that I noticed during the whole trip, every time you saw parties of school children, they had one of 3 things. They either had little coloured ribbons tied to their backpacks, which must have denoted which class they were with or which school they were with, neckerchiefs or baseball caps. So this is when rainbow coloured caps spell hope. Like a primary coloured train snaking along the tracks, you walk in formation, bright caps and bags denoting your youth. You move in trusting uniformity, following one after another, growing quieter with each exhibit viewed through rooms weighed down with sorrow. You mix with tourists clutching cameras tightly to heavy chests. Together we grow to understand the dawn of a new time in humanity. As the last exhibit's thin enough to move, we step out into sunlit spaces with eyes blinking softly, only in part due to the watery reflections thrown skywards from the monuments of glass, steel and stone held reverentially within the Peace Park. Amidst the city's cacophony of noise, even the buses passing by seem subdued, quieting in respect on a journey taken daily by new eyes keen to understand. We stand entranced by a single lotus flower, floating boldly to remind us that nature renews, even where man has reduced all to atoms. We see hope rising from Hiroshima's pain. Bowing our heads again, still silent, we leave of choice, knowing that tens of thousands did not get the chance to hold hope in adulthood.
Thank you very much. Our next reader is another of these multi-talented people who can do lots of different things. She has a background in computing science, but also in design and craft. She has a PhD in aspects of creative processes and was a researcher at Glasgow School of Art's Digital Design Studio until 2008. Her poems and short stories have been published in various anthologies. In 2019, she was shortlisted for the Wigtown Poetry Prize and longlisted in the National Poetry Competition. She says that her work is characterised by fierce looking at natural objects and processes, and often has a strong visual element, which you will see. I'm hoping that she may have posted the poem into chat. And she co-founded 4M Press in 2016, Mairghread McLundie.
Thanks very much, Jean. It's great to be here with everyone this evening, and it's very nice to see Janet again. I didn't recognise her with her longer hair. I've also got much longer hair than I had the last time we saw one another. In Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park, one of the smaller monuments is a peace clock tower, and it chimes every morning at 8:15, and on the plaque, part of it reads, 8:15 every morning, the mortal moment of the blasting back in 1945. The clock will chime its prayer for perpetual peace and appeal to the peoples of the world that the wish be answered promptly. May the chime pervade the remotest corner of the earth. And you can actually, if you search on YouTube, you can hear a recording. It's it's a haunting chime that the clock has. Heiwa no Takeito. 8:15 a.m. Droplets of sound fall, tremble, oscillate over paths, radiate through trees, harmonize, cancelling chatter, amplifying silence, reverberating. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next poet is Vicky Allen, who's contributed to our last anthology, Bridges or Walls. Vicky is the author of Broken Things and Other Tales, which was published in 2020 by Hedgehog Poetry Press. She's been published by many journals, both in print and online, Dyslexia, Stravagan, Saccharine Poetry, and has also been published in anthologies like Proust and Black Agnes Press. Her spoken word work, Wonderlines, was performed at the Edinburgh Book Fringe in 2018 and Fringe at the Yard as well in 2019. And she's a 2020 Pushcart Prize nominee. We're very glad to have her here tonight. Vicky Allen.
Thank you, Jean. I hope you can all hear me okay. Good.
Yes.
The poem that I wrote, I don't know if it's been a child of the 70s and 80s, but definitely growing up with that sense of the terrible stories that we've been, re-entering into tonight from Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And then for me growing up, it was When the Wind Blows. And yeah, I don't know if any of you remember that, but that terrified me as a child. And so I began thinking about this from the word apocalypse, which is a bit of a dark place to begin, isn't it? I began to think about what else it means, and apocalypse also means to reveal, to uncover, and so I began to wonder about how this worst possible event, these terrible things that we have been reflecting on this evening, they can also offer this opportunity to uncover what we really hope for, to kind of offer a new path, a correction. And we definitely need that. So that's what my poem, I suppose, is about, Hopeful Fools. The day came when we tumbled blinking into the light like fools revealed, like fools who'd forgotten their own address, like prodigals peeing in their own stairwells, trashing their own homes. And blinking in that bright, relentless light, we stopped, unsteady and raw, broken, dusty feet, bleeding our shame and dereliction. And we turned our faces to the forgiving, blessed sun, and hopeful fools, we learned a new way to live.
Thank you very much. It was beautiful. Our next poet is a Dovetails member who has a number of poetry pamphlets, one called Glassworks, which was shortlisted for the Callum MacDonald Award, and another one, Flout, which was inspired by Shetland. She's also a dance reviewer and very creative. She produced a poetry sound collaboration with the sound artist Sonia Heyer of Recordings Within Umbrellas. That appeared in Berlin in 2018 and Stanza in 2020. Stephanie Green.
Thank you. My poem is about the ceremony that is performed in Hiroshima every year to commemorate August the 6th, 1945. So on August the 6th every year, this ceremony goes on. And I looked this up, Googled it to see if it went ahead despite COVID last year, and yes, it did. But the camera only showed the officials concerned. There didn't appear to be a crowd there. Normally there are hundreds and thousands of people who go. The ceremony starts early in the morning, and at 8:15 there is 1 minute's silence. After that, there is speeches and whatever, and one of the most moving ceremonies is the floating of paper lanterns down the river. And in the daytime, children paint silly faces, smiley faces on the lanterns, and they're all different colors. But as it gets dark, more adults float their lanterns. And there are photos showing thousands and thousands of these lanterns floating down in the dark. And people think about the dead of Hiroshima and those who suffered afterwards through radiation sickness, but also they commemorate their own dead in their own families, especially recent deaths. And the idea is to pray for peace. So these lanterns symbolize our hope that such a terrible occurrence will never happen again. So my poem is called, it's only one verse. The poem is called Prayer for Peace. What can we do except fight darkness with light? Candle-lit lanterns floating in their thousands, flickers of hope on the dark, flowing river.
Thank you very much. That's very beautiful. Our next item is actually going to be a song. It's by Pauline Bradley, who many of you will have heard at our events. She has a very beautiful voice. And she is a singer, songwriter, and peace campaigner for many, many years. She founded a group called Sound Inspirations, which uses music and sound and creativity for healing and transformation. So I imagine that will be much needed in these days. She's done an album called No Borders, No Barriers, a book about the Liverpool Dockers, Another World is Possible. And she has her own YouTube channel, Pauline Bradley and Sound Inspirations. Without further ado, I will try to play you the song that Pauline has written.
Nuclear weapons are now illegal. Get them out of the ground. Get them out of the sea. Get them off of our land. Yes! Nuclear weapons are now illegal. Get them out of the ground. Get them out of the sea. Get them off of our land. Nuclear weapons are now illegal, as they always should have been. We're calling for a world without war, for our children's dreams. Yes, nuclear weapons are now illegal. Get them out of the ground. Get them out of the sea. Get them off of our land. 51. No, nuclear weapons are now illegal. Get them out of the ground. Get them out of the sea. Get them off of our land. Unsustainable, costly monsters polluting our lands and seas. Keeps us all in a state of fear. This is not what we want to be. Nuclear weapons are now illegal. Get them out of the ground. Get them out of the sea. Get them off of our land. We remember the death and suffering, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Chernobyl, fast lane, green and women, struggles for liberty. Yes, nuclear weapons are now illegal. Get them out of the ground. Get them out of the sea. Get them off of our land. But now is the time for celebration. We know what we have to do. Spend the money on helping people build a world that is new. Nuclear weapons are now illegal. Get them out of the ground. Get them out of the sea. Get them off of our land. Yes, nuclear weapons are now illegal. Get them out of the ground. Get them out of the sea. Get them off of our land.
Thank you. Our next section is about our own country, Scotland. We live directly in the shadow of the bomb. Fastlane, the home of the UK's current nuclear deterrent, Trident, is on the west coast of Scotland It's 26 miles from Glasgow, our country's largest city, 5 miles from Helensburgh, and just over 2 miles from the village of Gairlochhead, which has 3,700 inhabitants. Imagine the outcry if it were located near Guildford, which is 27 miles from London, or in some district 5 miles from London, like Tottenham or Camden Town. What if it were 2 miles from the delightful Shropshire market town of Church Stretton? Would the English public be happy about that? Here, we have no choice. Most of Scotland's political parties oppose nuclear weapons, apart from the traditional ones, Labour and Conservative. Yet the government in Westminster voted to renew our nuclear weapons programme and replace Trident with Dreadnought. The UK has refused to sign the Treaty on the Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. No wonder Barack Obama chipped in to oppose our independence during the referendum. We're an important military base for the USA. We who live directly in the shadow of the bomb feel fear and anger. We know the fragility of the natural world, and we know what's important in life. Along with hundreds of protesters and some of our poets, we say bairns, not bombs. Our first reader is a great friend of mine for a long time. She's a former journalist and teacher who has turned to creative writing and has contributed a lot of things to Tales. She's also had her work published in the Edwin Morgan Centenary Collection, Pandemic, and has recently had both her prose and poetry used in Seahorse Publications' new anthology, Words from Battlefield. You're going to hear one poem from her, but she already has a poem, Love Bomb, up on our blog, and there will be more up on the project. Mairi Jack.
Hello, my poem is The Whistleblower, about a young nuclear engineer who tried to expose the dangers lurking at Faslane. McNeely's whistle shrieked, shattering, scattering dark, dangerous secrets from beneath a black blanket of doom. He scared citizens, made them pause to think on his devastating claim, 30 security flaws on Trident submarines at Faslane. The Royal Navy reacted with fury, pooh-poohed his dossier and scandalously discharged this young mariner dishonourably. William McNeely still insists Trident is without doubt a disaster waiting to happen on our doorstep. And now we know the twists and turns of corrupt UK government. We shiver and spare a thought for brave McNeely, who blew the whistle and was silenced.
Thank you very much, Mairi. Our next poem is a very dramatic one by a poet you have heard already in another section, Peter Clive.
Thanks very much. Yes, so this is a poem that I wrote on the occasion of the solar eclipse on the 20th of March 2015. It's called Werewolves. We ran together, you and I, as wolves and werewolves through the thickening dusk, racing for 2.5 delirious minutes, twisting through vanishing twilit forests of hidden desire, transformed to reveal our secret selves, drunk with ecstasy and apocalypse, drunk with the darkness of the eclipse, rioting, giddy, swooning with the swift, sudden reperfusion of all the glorious unspent rage of ages past, restored by the wider world's paralysis, set free gone wild. The birds meekly surrender their songs to silence. The deranged sun rides the moon along a course plotted upon the surface of the earth by helpless astronomers. A few brief seconds are turned into an epoch, an age of wonder, in which our howls are tribute, not to some moon of myth, but one suddenly present and full with night during the brightest day, stealthily stashing the sun's stolen light on its dark side. Her lead disc offers a single coin to reckon the whole world's worth. Quoth the moon, why should I return your sun to you? The world it illuminates only excites your cupidity. By its light, your suspicious spy satellites peer over shoulders, reading communiques or love letters from 100 miles high. Why should I readmit you to their orbit, let alone allow you to trespass upon mine? Your society is a crime committed in broad daylight. Isn't the cover of darkness more fitting for your conspiracies? Inexorable and punctilious physical law punctually peels away the darkness she adores, from the highest mountain peaks to shingle shores, and the returning day is met, not with joy, but by our own resignation and indifference once more as we return to our desks and our dull quotidian chores. But we will run again as wolves and werewolves across the blazing cesium fields of Chernobyl, where we buried alive the angry fires we made, for a while at least, across the glittering bismuth marsh of Pripyat, drooling with the bitter potash filling our mouths and nostrils, leached from the ashes of this burned and bleached land, as all the world's gold melts and sublimates to nothing under an inevitable hot thermonuclear glare, and houses with walls made of feathers take flight, startled by the bomb's loud blast. And the fireball brings the eclipse home to stay at last, pulling the sun out of the earth, its cloudy fist first clenched around it, obscuring it like the moon had done, before opening its hand to blow the ashes from its palm, releasing us to roam and bay forever at the moon in the parched grey twilight woods of nuclear winter.
Thank you very much. It's a very dramatic poem, that one. Our next reader is also somebody very well known to everyone. She has volunteered in community poetry for many years in Edinburgh and also in Glasgow as events convener for the Federation of Writers. She's also been a director of the Scottish Writers' Centre and is the author of two pamphlets. Her most recent was Staying Alive, which is published by Duality in 2017. She's been in many anthologies, though I have to say, I think my favourite thing that she did was her poem Wojciech, the Hero Bear, was the official poem for the unveiling of the statue in Princes Street Gardens in 2015. And I have to say, she was there on that very riotous night when Women with Fierce Words launched their anthology. Roseanne Fraser Ritchie. Rose?
Hi there. Yeah, I was definitely there on that night, Jean. It was amazing.
It's a great night.
Yeah, so thank you very much for tonight. And I'm actually quite emotional with everything, all the words if I come across like that. And listening to, I listened to Vicky Allen's poem about Hiroshima, watching the images on television. We were brought up, with those images, but we still seem quite far away from it. And it was only when, a woman coming from Edinburgh, I'm a tourism graduate, and so, to visit Helensburgh, Charles Rennie Mackintosh, tourism attraction, and also, John Logie Baird and, you know, Helensburgh, you know, I found about all these things, but you know, there you have the massive elephant in the sea and the Clyde that I didn't really comprehend until much later. I've travelled to all around the world. You know, I've been to Europe, Dubai, and everything. But then, you know, you have to reflect. You know, what are we doing, Scotland? You know, having you know this. You know, what are we doing? And I'm just going to leave it there for the moment, but I hope to chat at a later time. And because my poem is basically about that. What, you know, I've had a good life. I've had quite a privileged life sometimes, but there we have nuclear. You know. Anyway, sorry. My poem is Fast Lane. Okay. She knows adventures, diving, champagne, escaping, running, hanging out, washing, ladders, stalking, aristocratic liaisons, creative innovations, family complications, stained red lipstick collar, spare time, love, not fast lane. Love burns, not bombs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our final section is called Earthrise. If we destroy our beautiful planet Earth with nuclear weapons, what then? The Earthrise part of this project is a special suite of poems by Aileen Ballantyne, taken from her collection Taking Flight, which was published by Lewis Press in 2019. It shows the beauty and fragility of the earth, and even more importantly, the power of our relationships as human beings. Some of the poems are written from the viewpoint of a very small and select group of people who've actually gone to the moon. As Bill Anders, who took the famous Earthrise picture that you're looking at, said, after all the training and studying we'd done as pilots and engineers to get to the moon safely and get back, as human beings to explore moon orbit, what we really discovered was planet Earth. And we are planet Earth. We've been here all along, and yet what have we discovered? How to blow ourselves up, destroy other people. Is that the summit of human achievement or its end point? In the UK, we live in a country which on Friday, 22nd of January, tomorrow, will be in flagrant breach of international law. Will we join with our fellow human beings in opposing arms, or will we continue as a country to put power before people? We hold the future of the world in our hands, and it's up to us to choose. Our next and last reader, though we're going to hear a song at the end, is Aileen Ballantyne. And again, another very multi-talented person who's a medical correspondent for The Guardian and the Sunday Times. Her journalism has twice been commended at the British Press Awards, and her news features on AIDS in the Sunday Times won the David Boyle Memorial Award at the Scottish Press Awards. Aileen has a PhD in creative writing and modern poetry and now teaches on the undergraduate course there. In 2015, she won first prize in the Dyslexia Poetry Competition for her poem on the Lockerbie disaster. She also won the Scots category of the Wigtown Poetry Prize in 2012. I don't know why, but Taking Flight is her first poetry collection. I hope it's going to be just the first of many. Aileen Ballantyne.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you very much, Jean, for that lovely introduction, and thank you for inviting me. The thing that interested me most when I was writing about flight in terms of the moon landings for this book was the 12 astronauts, all men in fact, who are the only people in the world who've ever actually set foot on the moon. And I read quite a lot of their accounts and I listened to what they said. And one in particular, the last one, Eugene Cernan, seemed to be able to put it into words better than most. And he, in fact, did trace the name of his daughter in the grey dust of the moon before he left. So this poem, while fictitious, does owe something to Jean Cernan for its inspiration. And the first little extract is just called Amy, and the second is called Earthbound. And the Earthbound section is the same astronaut some 50 years later at Cape Canaveral. Amy, taken from Voice Prints of an Astronaut. On the terrae of the moon, tired of coring rocks, I slug moonstones into space, do giant bunny hops on films, imagining her laughter as my camera rolls. And in the stillness of moonlights, I feel the tugging of the cord to Amy's yellow nightlight on the table in her room, and I trace out Amy's name in grey dead dust. And I know when we come back to our footprints and the stiffened flag, Amy's name will still be there in the sands without wind, without tide. Earthbound. I stand here with the crowd at Cape Canaveral now and then, remembering that wet-ash taste of the moon. The silver lunar module rises up on film, legs asplay, charcoal grey, falling away. An image running backwards of a bug splattered at full throttle on the windscreen of my car, its spindle legs askew. Now and then in winter sun, I feel the thud of re-entry boom and judder through my feet, and I know they are back. At home in my backyard, in the cold of winter, I look up, hear my spine clicking, remembering its lightness. And on the silver disc above, I know just where, in the windless stillness, I traced out Amy's name with my finger in grey moondust.
Thank you very much. That's so beautiful, that poem.
Thank you.
Our final performance is by Gerda Stevenson. Gerda can't be here tonight, but I'm going to play her music, and I'm going to share the screen with the picture, the painting that you saw. It was from Deirdre McLundie. I'm sure I've got that wrong. From Deirdre, who has joined us here tonight. It's a lovely song. You may know about Gerda. She's of a phenomenon. She is an award-winning writer, actor, director, singer-songwriter. Her collection, Quines, actually is one of the biggest selling poetry collections in Scotland. Her husband, Angus MacNicoll, the Gaelic poet, said to me that most poetry is lucky if they sell 300 copies. Hers has sold 3,000, and that was last year, so who knows. She has also been a winner of a BAFTA, Robert Tannahill Poetry Prize, and was nominated for Scots Singer of the Year following in the traditional, the Trad Awards. following an album of her own songs. This song that we're going to hear is Till Ungdommen. It's a poem from 1936 by a Norwegian poet, set to music many years later by the Danish composer Otto Mortensen. The song has been recorded by a lot of people, but after the terror attacks in July 2011, when Anders Breivik killed so many young people for some kind of right-wing philosophy, it's been used in many memorial gatherings and services.
Ranget be darkest face, gangen til your time, on a bloody storm, nu tak your stone, eblens I spear and dreed, uncovered open, what should I fecht we, what is my weapon? Here's your shield again, Oblaws, here's your claymore, faith in this life we hae, the worth o' man, for our future's sake, seek it, tak tend to it, die if ye maun, but grow and sterken it. Quaid gar the grenades, sleek at bonds, rees their brinch te death, rees them we our soul. War is a sneezed te life, peace is for te mak, cast in your var for death Montaigne. Then our weapons for we nae poor, if we mock mankind mens, we will mock peace, them that we that ta'en bear a burden, dear and sacred, whatever can a murder. This is our leal hecht, elken till all, goodness we will gie to your yard and its life, we will tend, we love its bras, its warmth, like beer and a beer and do sleep.